Three, two. Oh, look, we're live. I have a guest. It's gonna be freaking sweet.
Though I know I should be wary, still I venture someplace scary. Ghostly haunting, I turn loose. Beetlejuice! Beetlejuice! Beetlejuice!
All right, ladies, gentlemen, my fellow other, everything in between. See, look, we've got some furries already howling. But I am joined with my good friend here today, a Mr. Corey McLane. He's actually the head as well as the lead singer of a band named Exhale that totally, if anyone's watching, could totally give some business and stuff to. He's also one of the most talented musicians I know. Say hi to the good folks on the internet, Corey.
Hi to the good folks on the internet, it's Corey.
Oh,
thanks for having me, Foxy. I appreciate it, buddy.
Absolutely, my man. Absolutely. And one of the reasons I kind of wanted to get you on is just because you have experience within the music industry. You've been gigging for what, like almost 2 decades now?
Yeah, 22 years in rock bands. I'm getting old.
It's I've heard it's not recommended, but hopefully with that comes some wisdom. But I do feel that music is one of at least 3 things that cut across all of humanity. It's music, food, and love. Those, and very often they kind of mix together in many ways.
Absolutely.
But the music business is notoriously tough. It can be very stressful, and I've heard at times even cutthroat. I was just hoping you could share a little bit of your story, kind of like what got you into the music industry and kind of like how you kind of navigate. Because I've heard some stories, but I just want to hear your story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I first picked up a guitar. I was about 13, 14. And as soon as I picked it up, I started trying to sing at the same time and write my own songs. And, I've written a few good songs at this point, most of which are absolute garbage. You don't release everything you write. No. Well, I mean, it's, if you,
I mean, I've totally never spent like an hour doing things for a video and then realizing, oh, this is kind of crap. I'm going to go in a completely other direction.
Oh man, I have so much stuff on the back burner that you'd laugh at it. You'd be like, wow, like this is silly. Like, why would you do this? And I mean, even Exhale now, where we're like by far one of the most versatile rock bands out there, I'll at least give us that. When you listen to the full album that we've released, you don't really know where we're going to go with it. There's stuff that taps into a lot of grunge, like post-grunge era type stuff. We do the sing scream thing, so we tap into the metal end of things a little bit. My drummer's phenomenal. He went to MI out in California for drums. So we're very drum driven, very guitar driven, like a metal band. But then we have all these kind of ambient, like violins and pianos and these down tempo, really pretty kind of sections. We've gotten compared to bands like Opeth, which was really interesting the first time I heard that, because I wasn't familiar with a lot of their catalog, and they have a very, very wide range of sounds that come out of them. They're from another country. I'm going to sound stupid saying that. They're from like Sweden or something. I don't remember. But they're a phenomenal band. I went and checked their catalog out after enough people, when we were gigging, enough other musicians that we gig with were like, hey man, like you sound kind of like Opeth. I'm like, in that wheelhouse. I'm like, huh? I'm like, I don't know who that sound, like what they really sound like. I've heard the band name before. I went and checked their stuff out, and I see where people get it from, because we're, like I said, we're all over the place. Tempo changes, drastic dynamics. Like, it's a nightmare for a sound guy to mix us. But
I was going to say, because I remember at some of those shows, like, I feel like some of the sound guys are like, all right, here's our default thing. And then you would get up there and it'd be like, oh, I think we broke the sound guy or something there. It's like, you're kind of like the strange quarks of like a band. It's like you go into like, because I remember I had gone through a couple of tracks of like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. And we want that. Like, a lot of bands struggle to find their sound, and then they just kind of write the same sound over and over again. And I desperately want to stay away from that at all costs. I like a wide variety of music, and I think that should reflect on how you write. If I could sing like Sean Morgan, would I write a bunch of Seether-esque material? Yeah, damn right I would, because the guy can do no wrong. Everything he writes is top of the charts to this day. Since I've been like 15 years old, like the guy he's unlimited amount of creativity. But I'm not. My voice doesn't do it. His voice does. He's a baritone. He has this cool, like, natural growl thing, and he goes with what he knows. What I know is to kind of jump all over the place. Sometimes it works in our favor. Sometimes we scare people away. I've had big, burly metal dudes kind of look like you, the big beard, the big muscles. They come up and they're like, man, you guys are kind of emo. You sound like Blink-182. And I'm like, all 180 pounds of me wants to punch them in the face. But I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know what to tell you. Like, sometimes we're heavy, sometimes we're not. Like, if we're playing with heavier bands, we pull a lot of our heavier material. And sometimes it doesn't satiate the metalhead, because a lot of straight up metal guys, that's all they like. If you start singing, you're emo. I'm like, well,
it's going to be hard. Like, do you feel that's almost counterintuitive? Because I ain't going to lie. Like, I'm one of those people. It's like, once I kind of like get into like a band, an artist or something, I'm like, I want more of that. It's like, well, example, Rob Zombie. It's like, there's a very heavy bass undertone and a lot of just the same stuff there. I'm like, I like that. But then again, it's like, I also like changing it up as well. And it's just, you all kind of touch upon a number of different things. And I think you're the first person I've ever heard sing Little John acoustically.
That's actually, I can't take credit for that. There's a dude on YouTube that I don't remember his name right now, but Jeremy, my producer and best friend, who I write with, and he mixes and masters all the Exhale stuff. His wife sent me this link because she thought it was really funny. Like, she grew up in Lowell. She goes to dance clubs and she was doing that whole scene when she was younger. Yeah. And I don't know who Lil Jon is. Like, I don't listen to rap or whatever even genre that is. She sent me this clip of this guy, and he went into like a small cafe, and it's like all, reluctant people sitting there kind of watching him, and he's just got an acoustic guitar. He's got a beautiful voice, and he starts singing Lil Jon, and most people are like turn and laugh because they start catching on to the lyrics. But sonically, it just sounds like this pretty song with a nice melody. Like, you don't hear, if you're not paying attention to lyrics, it just sounds like background music.
Exactly. No, it's a very lovely song, and then you're like, oh, he's saying what now?
Yeah, it's pretty vulgar. I mean, I've gotten banned from playing venues for playing that at the end of the night. And you know what, part of me, like, as a professional, like, trying to make the money for the solo gigs, to pay bills and stuff, because I'm like a full-time musician. So doing that, I'm like, it's important to keep getting the same gigs, recurring. But at a certain point, like, when you're doing it all the time, like every night, 3 to 4 hours straight, I don't take breaks because I'm bad at talking to people. So I just go straight through. And at the very end of the night, when it's like 11 o'clock, you kind of have this, fuck it mentality. Like, you don't really care as much anymore. You do, but you don't, because you're just, you're tired. You've already entertained the room. You've done your work part. So you want to kind of pull out these like somewhat comedic, light sounding things that aren't serious, that, you didn't play 3 hours ago when people were dining, when they're, 65 years old and they want to hear Eric Clapton. It's like, okay, I'm not going to do that for 4 hours. Like, I will personally get bored of that. So like, I throw in stuff like, I do, Alanis Morissette and stuff like that, which, has an F-bomb in it. And occasionally I have to duck it out. But that stuff just is same as what Exhale does. I want to be versatile with any type of music that I'm getting involved in, because I don't want to bore people. I don't want to be bored with myself is the main thing. So if I'm bored with myself, I assume other people are going to get bored with me as well. And I like to avoid that. So I got banned from actually two venues in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And what sucks is they were high paying venues too. And I didn't know it was a problem. And the booking agency I was going through for those specific gigs at the time, like, wrote me an email. It's like, yeah, they don't want you to come back because of that. And I had already played there like 5 or 6 times. But I'm like, oh man, I'm like a rebel. I'm getting banned from venues for playing like silly cover songs at 11:30 at night when I didn't think it was going to be an issue. But you got to keep people happy.
So you've gotten deplatformed from venues by literally saying bad words.
Essentially, yeah. But it's not like I'm not screaming into the microphone bad words. It's like, it's very subtle. Like, if you're really paying attention, you hear it.
Well, it's also music, and like within this channel, and quick shout outs to our friends over here in the YouTube chats as well. We have Joe Franco. We have Joe here as well as my other patron, Dave. This show is helped made possible by viewers like you, as well as we got Bone, who's currently in an identity crisis. He's gone from cat to dog, and he's saying that apparently my channel is now blowing up because this past Monday, we happen to have a porn star on, a Miss Maya Moreno. We discussed basically the industry of sex trafficking, and as well as she happened to be a member of DACA. And now we have a rock star on. So
let's do quotes when we Rockstar.
Yeah.
Well, no, here's the thing. Any actual successful musician that's done the circuit and they've made a career out of it, I've spoken to personally, they hate the term rock star, because when they hear rock star, they think like, I don't want to name drop, but there are certain singers from certain bands that kind of act like absolute asshats, like impossible to like them, because just as people, they are awful. And it happens locally and it happens nationally. And when those nationals come into the local circuit, it's very noticeable, and the word gets around real quick. And then venues actually start dropping those bands. And then only certain venues will take them in. And it's this recurring kind of almost cosmic joke that certain rock stars act like rock stars. And then the ones that, are humble and like, just good, genuine people that love music in and out, they come in and they're like, oh, you guys are great. Like, they stay, they'll listen to the local acts, they'll compliment you, they'll talk about gear with you, they'll give you advice. Those are the ones that, like, they hate the term rock star. They don't want to be called a rock star. But I mean, I don't correct people when they say it. I'm just like, nod, smile. They don't mean harm. But among musicians, that term carries this kind of this negative backbone with it that you don't really think about unless you're involved with it.
I apologize.
No, don't apologize. It's all good. It's all good. My favorite singer-songwriter, musician, Jay Lauren from the band Hurt. I've met him several times, and he's like one of the nicest dudes ever. And like, he is one of the few people that he doesn't just do the signing and the autographs and all that stuff. He like mingles. Like, he'll go out into the audience after a show, and he wants to like meet and talk to you and like have a conversation with everyone who genuinely appreciates what he's doing for us. And I feel like that's a lost art. Like, that used to be a thing, and it's less and less as time goes on, because people they either write songs or they get into bands, and they want to be famous rock stars, and they want the whole thing. They want the free bottle of bourbon when they show up. They want only the red Skittles in their green room bowl, and like they get kind of snotty about it. And it's nice and humbling to meet these musicians that I've looked up to for so long. And then when you finally meet them, they're like, oh, don't meet your heroes. But like, sometimes you want to meet them, and they're awesome. Like, Jay Lauren, like I love that guy in and out. Like, he's just such a good dude. And like his heart and soul, like everything he puts into music is like what I would strive for. I think that people like Kurt Cobain kind of had that. They're not people. They're not people. They're not extroverts. They don't want to be out in the crowd. They don't really want to have to socialize with everyone. But if somebody cares that deeply about what they've created and what they're putting out into the world, they want to get to know those people. They want to hear how they feel when they hear their own material. And I think that's awesome. Honestly, I think if Kurt Cobain was still alive today, he would be shocking all of us with the stuff that he would write and come up with, because he's just he was one of those naturally gifted songwriters, a creative mind, where a lot of the times these days you hear bands that just like, it's recycled. It's like, oh, you sound like this band. I know like Breaking Benjamin, very big band. I like Breaking Ben. There are, probably 50 or 60 bands I could think of, either locally or nationally, that try to sound exactly like them. And it's like, that's cool. Like, if they have a cool sound, I get why you'd be influenced by that. But if I hear a song and I'm like, yeah, you sound like Breaking Ben Part 2. Like, it's Breaking Benjamin with a slightly different singer. And they're even trying to sound like Ben Burnley when they sing. And like, it just gets kind of tiresome. I think people tend to genre jump when that happens. They're like, oh, I'm sick of this. I'm going to go listen to EDM. And then like, you lose this like rock circuit, which has been not null and void, but like definitely tighter knit group. Like, everybody almost knows everybody at this point. And I'll say this, New England has like one of the tightest knit communities of musicians that I've ever witnessed. I mean, I've been doing this for, 22 years. And a long time ago, it was like, you show up, you do your gig, you go home, and you didn't like check out all the other bands. They didn't check you out. They didn't buy your CDs. They didn't like wear your merch on stage. It was like, people did, sure, but not like the way it is now. The way it is now, like we have to rely on each other to promote each other and build each other up. So it's creating this like almost what happened with the Seattle scene in the 90s, you know, the whole grunge movement where it was like, you know, Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, like all those bands that Stone Temple Pilots, all these bands that come out of that Seattle sound. And they, I know from reading stuff in Rolling Stone that they didn't all get along, but they all were kind of at the same time and would do these tours. And like, it was a movement, you know, it's the grunge movement. Like they took over a new genre. And I feel like that's starting to kind of be what happens now. Only the bands that stick together don't sound alike, which is really weird. Like some of our close friends that are in really, really good bands, I wouldn't say they sound anything like Exhale. We don't sound anything like them, but like when we gig with them, we're like, oh, crap, this band's awesome. Like everything about them is awesome. And then you meet them, you hang out with them, and you do, you know, 10, 20, 30, 50 more shows with these bands. And then you become pretty close friends. And it's like, okay, then you end up at, you know, one of their weddings because you're that close with them. And it's this whole like communal, awesome thing. I could start listing bands to go check out. I probably should, but I would not be able to stop because there's that many that are like in this area that are just like mind blowing. And they've been doing it, you know, as long as me or longer, or even like there's this band called Bare Ass, and Braden's a good buddy of mine. He's a phenomenal frontman and singer-songwriter. I don't think he knows how amazing he is. And he's a young kid. He's like in his early 20s. So like he thought I was 25. So he's like my best friend now. When he told me that, I was like, yeah. But we gigged with them a few times and I was like, they sound like almost like Silverchair, but like super creative, strange, like awesome. They're just, everything they do is awesome. And they shocked us live. I bought their CD at the show and went home and like listened to it. I was like, wow, this is so different than anything I've heard come out of any music genre. And then you have friends that, you know, I grew up with a lot of rock and roll fans, of course, that lose interest. They're like, well, no good music is being made anymore. And it's like, no, like you just have to look for it. There's tons of awesome music being made, but it's way harder to find it.
It's not always the advertised top recommended thing that's going to come up there as well. It's kind of like you said, a lot of folks, something becomes popular. A lot of folks kind of start to copy it. And then eventually people get bored and move on.
Yeah, that's the nature of the beast, as they say. But I mean,
you mentioned never happened anywhere else before.
You mentioned Rob Zombie earlier, right? So, like musicians like him, phenomenally talented dude, like one of the best performers on the planet, and still does what he does. Like he still keeps up like he did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even actually, with White Zombie. And like you're thinking about these bands that have been around that long, and they're the ones that are still successful. That like, you know, I know when a new Seether release is out. I know when a new Marilyn Manson song comes out. I see ads, get advertisements, people share it. And I don't know when these bands that he identifies as a cat. That's funny. Sometimes I have to dig. I have to like, you know, follow them on Spotify or like join their email list even, and then they'll send me something like Soul Asylum still makes music. And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't like follow them. And my wife and I went to see them, and it was like phenomenal. It was like they didn't even lose a beat. It was like as good as they were in the 90s and even late 80s because they've been around that long. And their new material is awesome too. And I wouldn't know that if I wasn't like, you know, doing some homework. And that sucks. Like I don't want to have to dig for it. I want rock music to be pushed on me like it was when I was a kid.
Why is this so? Is it because we've gone away from radio and stuff, and radio kind of like help different things go around the circus? Because I hear a lot of times from like some of our friends down in Florida that all of a sudden be like, oh yeah, this is the big thing that's been going on for 2 months. It's like, oh, that was like 6-7 months ago down in Florida, because that kind of also seems to be an area where a lot of new and emerging music that would come out would kind of cycle around from.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Shinedown is from Jacksonville, Florida. They're one of those bands that like, I lived in Florida for about 5 or 6 months when I was like 18 or so. And that's when Fly From the Inside from Shinedown came out on the radio, and it was a local radio station. It wasn't like up here. There were no like pushes for this band yet. And I remember the local DJ saying that he's like, watch out. He's like, this band's going to be the next Linkin Park. They're going to be huge. Like, they're going to be around for decades because the singer's phenomenal. The songwriting's great. And he was right. You know, I moved back up like 6 months later. I moved back to Massachusetts, actually New Hampshire. And then sure as shit, like a year later, all I hear is freaking Shinedown everywhere. They like played Local Bazooka, and they're with all these like, top acts. Like Stained was on top of the world at the time. They you know, got under Aaron Lewis's wing for a little while with touring and all that. And then they released 45, and then they released the cover of Simple Man by Lynyrd Skynyrd. And then it was all easy riding for them. It was like everything they released after that was top of the charts, and it still is. Like anything Shinedown touches is gold. People are going to buy it because they know who Shinedown is. So if they're a rock fan, they're like, that's one of the few bands they can rely on to keep giving them good music. They're like, yeah, Shinedown's still great, but you know, I want to hear new music. And I'm like, you got to look for it. You can't just make, you know, you can't assume that's going to be forced on you like it was when we were kids.
That's the other thing now, just because we also have, with the internet and everything, especially living in times of plague and everything going on, we now have the ability for a lot of folks to focus on these different things. Because like even with on Instagram, I don't use IG that much, but it's like there are a lot of folks that'll just be on there. I'll pop on all of a sudden, like somebody's playing the piano or something like that. I'm just like doing some electric jazz. I'm like, dude, this stuff is freaking sweet. Like there's so many talented people out there just to kind of like figure out like what works for other people. If only we could create like an app that was kind of like that wine tasting thing. I thought Pandora was kind of supposed to do that, but to get on Pandora for the normal person, we needed a Pandora for the people.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big Pandora buff for a long time. You know, when Exhale released, it was 2019, we released our first full length album. But we do everything in house, like all recorded at home. So the mixing process, all that stuff takes a little longer than it would if we hired, you know, a group of people who do it every day, all day in their professional setup. But we'd release a single at a time for a few months straight until our full album was done. Then we released the full album. These singles ended up, you know, you can go onto Pandora. You can do it right now. You go on Pandora and have Exhale Radio. And I had to curb the algorithm myself, which is a little embarrassing because like if you're advertising, you're like, oh, we're on Pandora. They're like, great. But you have to specifically say Exhale Radio, pick one of our songs and start it that way in order to hear our material. It's not like we show up.
You need to get the seed because you also don't have a very specific tone. You guys are kind of like the strange quarks of bands. Again, you exist in many states at once. So it's like to hammer it, that's also very interesting just because like I feel like even on YouTube, again, that's a different beast, but unless I'm really focusing on a very particular topic, you get all those additional tags, maybe use a particular picture or thumbnail that kind of also maps along a particular topic as well. You tend to not get traction, especially if it's like, all right, I'll talk about philosophy, I'll talk about politics, then I'll just make a video trolling people into furries. So it's like, all right, I'm covering a very broad spectrum here, so the algorithm's like, this?
Right. And well, I mean, YouTube's mostly about tags, right? So if you're doing like YouTube tags and somebody types in a search for one of those many tags that you're using, that's when your video will pop up. And then the more views you get, the better into the algorithm you get. And then you get more and more popular. And then once you're popular, it's pretty easy to stay that way on YouTube. Because, you know, you're already in the algorithm. So like everything you release, you have all these subscribers and then people are sharing it. And tagging is like a crucial thing for them. Pandora is a little different because you need to create an algorithm. People have to hear your music, and then they also have to listen to bands in our wheelhouse, like, you know, Seether and Hurt and like Shinedown, Breaking Benjamin, those kind of bands, Opeth, I guess. If they hear all those bands and then, you know, they have Exhale Radio and they thumbs down everything that isn't in that wheelhouse, that's how you curb the algorithm. And then eventually, if there's enough people doing it, then maybe when you're listening to Seether Radio, you might hear an Exhale song. And it's just so hard to get to that point where it's like, basically you need to already be successful to be successful in the modern music age. And it's really tough to do that when you don't have, you know, capital, like money.
Right. Well, this is the thing I've even noticed, because I've had some friends tell me, even, sorry to cut you off there, Core, but it's like, even within like the Facebook thing, it's like, I've tossed a couple of bucks here or there, but it's like, for it to really get off, it's like, I heard literally a professional journalist even say the other day, it's like, literally, you need to spend money to make money, because you might have something that's hot, you might have a great quality thing, but you kind of need to feed something in. And then once you, like you said, once you get that viewership, that listenership, and everything like that, once you start being successful, it's like, all right, you're already established within the algorithm. I also love how the fact that you said the views, because a lot of folks like to smash that like button, which is completely all right, but that tends to more along the lines, again, on a hypothesis opinion from some dude on the internet, increase what you're going to be shown, which may recommend similar content of this type to you, but it tends to modify your viewership and perhaps put you in a bit more of an echo chamber, depending on what you're liking. So that's why I don't always like things. I know I'm a terrible person.
No, that's fair, man. I mean, I like a wide variety of music. I mean, Sarah Brightman's one of my favorite singers of all time, and she's a soprano opera singer. So, she was the original Christine in the original Phantom of the Opera, like Andrew Lloyd Webber days. And actually, she was married to him for a little while. We watched. My wife and I watch her do her, like, I don't do holidays, like I don't do Christmas, but like she did a Christmas special like streaming because we're in a pandemic, and it was very well done. You could tell they were like 20 or 30 feet apart, like every musician was far away from each other, and you pay, I think it was like $15 or something to be able to watch the stream, and it was short, it's like an hour long or so, and from somebody who's like a Slipknot fan, and then I'm like, oh no, like we watched some opera last night, and I've seen Sarah Brightman live was one of the greatest concerts I've ever seen in my life, including rock shows. The light show, just like the whole stage, everything about it was just like this. I remember coming, like when it finished, I remember kind of being zoned out. Like I didn't realize where I was. Like it was almost a full like surreal, like whoa, like I probably drooled all over myself because I'm just like studying and just in awe of like this epic show, this performance.
Exactly. No, it was a show. It was an experience there. And it was also a shared experience among the folks that were there. I mean, it's almost kind of like watching like a lot of those old movies back when we went to movie theaters and stuff like that. Like you watch like the Lord of the Rings, and all of a sudden it's like at the end, it's like, oh, we're going to end you and stuff, the Nazgul King and stuff like that. And all of a sudden it's like, no man can kill me, and all of a sudden she's just, I am no man, and just freaking like critical hits them right in the face and everything. It's like there's certain moments where we're like, yeah, or they're getting off the boats and everything. It's like Gimli's like, all right, there's plenty for the both of us. May the best dwarf win. It's like just experiences like that. It's like those are shared moments and everything, and like I feel like the internet has kind of helped jade us in many ways. It's a fabulous opportunity. I totally view the internet like chakra. It's a conduit that can connect us all, and we could use it as a tool to help bring us together or as a weapon to drive us apart. It's up to us.
That's very true. Well said. I like you're bringing up Facebook again. Facebook was like this necessary evil. I remember actually a mutual friend of ours, Julia Jerome, way back, like way back. Like we were gigging in this really awful venue in Somerville, Mass, and I think it was with In This Moment. I think we were opening for In This Moment. It was like a really big band, and I remember Julia came to the show with like a group of friends, and she was just like, I don't even know when you guys are playing, because like we were only on MySpace, and she I know, right? And she was like first year in college at the time, I think. And she's like, no, you got to get on the Facebook thing. Get on the Facebook thing. And like to this day, I'm like a little resentful, because like Facebook's this funnel of like suck. Like it just like it draws so much of your time, and I'm not even sure how beneficial it really is. But the fact that every single person I know is freaking on it all the time, that's how you communicate with people now. And it's like, I kind of just hate the concept of it, where it's like you're forced to use this thing that doesn't like us. Like it hates music. Like it's not good for bands at all. It's like one of the worst social media platforms for bands, but it's a necessary evil. If you're not on it, then no one knows what you're doing, because like that's where everybody is. It kind of sucks.
Well, this is the interesting thing. We talked a little bit about this before. Just the whole, it's like, depending on what platform you're on, there's different groups and communities that kind of focus on different things as well. It's like you said, it's like Facebook, it's like, all right, your little interactions, this, that, I need a plumber, bada boom, bada bing. Okay. Whereas other folks spend a lot of time on places like, I don't know, let's say the Twitters. Some folks like us spend times on the YouTubes and everything like that. And depending on where you are, the groups and communities of people that you're interacting with, like I myself, really haven't been doing the Facebook as much in the recent years. I tend to think it's made me a little bit more sane, as well as getting away from. Basically, I'm like, wait a second, I can turn off updates on my phone. Oh my God, it's like a whole new world there. It's like I could just pop in, check a couple of things. But then again, I see exactly what you're saying, because the algorithms on these sites, from what I've been told, they're meant to just have you be a time sink. It's just be there, be an active user, click on things, interact, consume.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what?
You know what though, if I wasn't going on Facebook, even all these bands that we gig with, that some of my favorites, like I mentioned, Bare Ass, and these guys, Parts Per Million, Grace Drive, 16 by 20, Signal to Noise, like all these bands that are like really, really talented dudes. If they weren't sharing it on Facebook, I probably wouldn't know about it unless they like private messaged me and was like, hey, we have a new like full music video out, or a full album out, especially these days where I don't see them in person anymore. When I would see them all the time, like once or twice a month, minimally, sharing the stage with like, these different bands. Renegade Cartel was another one. Like we gigged with them a lot, and I miss those guys. Like we don't get to see them in person because we're in a freaking pandemic. We can't gig. Exhale in particular, we took it upon ourselves to stop a little earlier than it was mandated to not gig. We just didn't want to encourage our friends and fans and stuff to gather and then, feel responsible for them getting sick, or, because all it takes is really one person to be really contagious. And they're in this room full of these people, like everyone that I love, and everybody.
It's like just in case. And a lot of folks have older relatives and stuff. Dude, I hear you and stuff. And like, I actually feel extremely blessed that I got to go to PAX East 2020. Right before everything really went down, and people were even starting, because I think Sony had pulled out, because I think there had started to be some cases in like Japan or something like that, and I think like the mayor or something was like, oh, this and that, and then we got right up to it, and like the day after, they had like hand sanitizer everywhere on day 2. They were constantly wiping things down. It does also have the benefit of being a convention center, so the total volume of air is a heck of a lot more than just having like a standard like 8-foot ceiling or something there. So I do think that played a role, because I didn't hear about any cases coming out of there. I mean, it was still a bit early, but even at that time, it's like, I don't know. But
I mean, when it was still early, I was still doing my solo acoustic gigs, because that's how I pay my rent. And I through, I think, February, March is when we first started hearing about the pandemic and, the potential of how bad this could get. And I was like, I'm a germaphobe as it is. Like, that I'm a very hyper aware, clean individual. I mean, my routine hasn't changed at all. Like if I have to go anywhere, I'm like, I would do all the sanitizing stuff anyway. Just now people don't think I'm a weirdo if I'm wearing a mask. Now it's like normal, which is great, but like that other people are starting to be like germ aware. But I was still doing the solo gigs, and then it turned into like summertime hit, and I made the decision to only do outdoor venues because it's a little safer. I can be like 40 to 60 feet away from anybody that I'm performing for. I even did like a busking thing for the city of Lowell. They were trying to bring back like the art back to Lowell, because Lowell was like null and void. Like you walked around, if you drove around Lowell, it was depressing. Like usually there's people everywhere, they're shopping, they're eating at restaurants and little patios and all that stuff. This was just like sad. Like you go around and like you don't even see cars driving around. So they were trying to
city's a ghost town.
And it's so weird, because like I've played, I don't even know how many shows at this point in Lowell over the years, a lot. But over the summer, when it like the whole like pandemic thing was an issue, we were like kind of nervous about it, like going out into public, and I was staying home otherwise. So as soon as I ended up back in Lowell, I was like, okay, like this is kind of weird. Like people would tip you, but then I'm like, I don't really want to touch the money. It's like this whole strange thing. I think I lost Fox. Where'd you go?
Oh no. I was looking.
No getting naked on the show, Foxy. If you're
hey, no, that's on Pornhub or maybe OnlyFans. We'll see. But no, the way you were kind of describing the whole band thing right there was it, especially with like the groups that kind of gravitate around you, you kind of complemented each other there. And it really reminds me of playing a game of like Dungeons and Dragons or like World of Warcraft or one of those RPG games, because I always got to bring it back to gaming because I'm a gamer. But the thing is with that, it's like, all right, you want to have some sort of a balance. If everybody is like you said, like wicked hard grunge, it's like, oh, okay, if you're going to a grunge show, that's fine. But if you're going around doing the generalized music scene, it's like, okay, you want folks to be kind of exposed to some of this, and maybe somebody's more of a classic rock or a country fan or something, and just having a bit of a diversity of music. It's like you might not really be a fan of maybe most opera, but all of a sudden you come across a particular person, you're like, I like that.
Yeah.
Broaden your horizons.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't do that. I know, especially in the metal circuit. I mean, there are open-minded metalheads out there. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of the ones that I know are like sticklers, man. Like they're like, no, everything. Like the people who Metallica. That's what you need to bring up for metalheads. If they're one of those people that's like every single thing Metallica released after Ride the Lightning was absolute trash, you're like, okay, you're probably not going to like my band. Like it's a mindset thing. It's like if you're completely closed-minded to any songwriting after that because they got a little more radio friendly, a little less metal, they had a little more dynamic. It wasn't like they weren't like this thrash metal band like they were back with like Kill 'Em All and Master of Puppets and stuff. Metallica is always like this primary thing that you discuss with these strict metal guys, and you're like, well, are you like an open-minded metal guy? Like you're cool with some Metallica that came out later? Or are you like, nope, if it doesn't have metal, like screaming, like basically shouting or screaming the whole time and just like, you can headbang the entire time, then I'm not listening to it. It's stupid. I'm not dealing with that. It's like, all right, like, to each their own, like go listen to that. But I'm tired of it. Like, I don't want to gig with bands that sound like that only sound like that. Like I want to hear some art, like come at me with something new. I want to be surprised. And I think like, the local scene now is very much like that. Like I hear stuff, I'm like, holy crap! I'm like, how do these people come up with this stuff? Because you really wonder where their influences get pulled from. I know like mine are all over the place, so like it kind of makes sense that like my songs, like anything I write, is going to be a little, broad for genres, but when I didn't think it was going to be that common of an occurrence these days, because it never was before. Like, you had 80s bands, like all the hair bands, they sound like hair bands. Like all their stuff is like party, party, party. And then they have the one ballad and it's like all of them did it. It's so you just expect it. And then the grunge scene, I think, is when stuff started to get a little more versatile, where it's like, okay, there's some similarities between like bands like Stone Temple Pilots and Alice in Chains, but like they're very distinctively different sounding bands. And like, Soundgarden too. I mean, Soundgarden was like a mind bender. Like they would go into weird time signatures and you're like almost confused listening to it. I was, because I wasn't a musician yet. Like when I'm like 12 or 13, I'm hearing it. I'm like, what the hell are they doing right now? And I was always a huge fan, but like, as you progress musically, or like you learn a little music theory, you're like, oh, like they're like kind of music nerds. Master of Puppets is the best. Joe Franco just mentioned. He probably hates Load. Do you hate Load and Reload and everything after that? Because he's probably a metal guy.
Well, this is the interesting thing, because certain bands, in this instance Metallica, it's almost like a musical litmus test. It's like, all right, what direction do you want to go? We're going to use this as a barometer here.
Right.
And then we just kind of like delve from there. And it's like you said, it's like, if you don't happen to like our work, it's like you don't have to listen and stuff. But if you happen to want to share it around, or somebody that might kind of like it, it's kind of really sounding like, at least before our current situation, there was basically a decently healthy local scene that was kind of going around. Hopefully we'll still have Folk Festival 2021, hopefully, but the development of itself, and just kind of, I feel like some of the bands, maybe your guys are borrowing from each other. Do you think any of that happens? Like all of a sudden you're touring with somebody and they're doing something, you're like, whoa.
Well, I mean, think of it this way: if I'm only hearing new, like if all the new music I'm hearing from new bands are the ones that I'm gigging with and know personally, I'm undoubtedly inevitably going to pick up influence from them, because like that's the music I'm hearing now. So do I still listen to, did I buy the new Seether album when it came out? Yeah, you damn right I did, because like I've been a Seether buff since I was like freaking 14. So and I still love everything Sean Morgan's ever written. Because of Cliff. Yeah, that makes sense. I actually agree with you on that one as far as bass players go, but I do like versatile Metallica. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back. Well, now that's my train of thought. He's gonna be thinking about
the influence. Well, this is the thing. It's like you get stuff from every angle, but influence on each other from different musicians.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I undoubtedly get influence from a lot of the bands we play with, and I don't know if they'd get influence from us. If they do, great. If they don't, great. Like I just want people to like. I think you should write music for yourself. You shouldn't write music because you like a band and you want to sound, or write music because you want to be popular in a popular band, like be famous. Like that needs to go away. That whole like mindset. I think that you need to. I mean, it's great to want to work within the genres you like. Yeah, that makes sense. Right in the genre you like, great. But like, if you're like, oh well, Maynard from Tool is my favorite singer. I'm just going to emulate everything he does. I'm going to emulate. Like, I'm just going to sing exactly. I'm getting distracted by the cool comments. Like, if you're going to emulate every single thing Maynard does, it's like, well, like, are you creating then? Like, you're just kind of. You're stemming off of what somebody else's creativity did. I think you should at least approach it almost. I talk to my bandmates like this when we're writing, like approach it like a child. Like if you're the innocence of a kid with no outer influence, really, no rules, no regulations, no like Berkeley by the book music rules where you have to follow this by this by this. Just approach it like it's supposed to be fun, because it is. That's why we all got into music in the first place, is because it's supposed to be fun. And I think it gets away from people. They get like stressed out over it. They're like, oh, well, this song's 5.5 minutes long. The only successful songs that are on the radio now are 3.5 minutes. I need to cut down to. It's like, no, if you like the song, release the damn song. Do it as you liked it. Don't be restricted. I don't like restricted music. Like, don't feel like you're limited to follow any kind of guideline. Just do what you do, and people are going to like it. People are not going to like it, but at least you're like being honest with yourself.
This reminds me of something that Elon Musk had said, I think, in an article the other day, where he's like, I think there's too many MBAs running America or something like that. And it's like, if you think about it, because this is essentially what they teach you. Again, I don't have an MBA or anything, but I was in business school. All I know is they're like, all right, you look at who are successful in the market. You gain models from that. You follow certain models. And if all of a sudden it's like, well, the only 5.5 minute songs that are successful have this particular sound. We don't match these things. So I think we've actually trained the algorithms to follow a very specific thing, just because, one, it's a bit in our nature, and the sheer fact, if you got the folks that are kind of controlling a lot of the money and everything and investment, kind of just looking at these numbers and metrics and saying, do this, make money, I think we're depriving ourselves of just some really good art.
Agreed. But you know what, too? Record labels used to be almost a complete necessity in order to be on the map as a musician. And nowadays, that's not the case. Nowadays, it's more like if you know how to work the business of the digital market, and you basically need a business degree to pull a rabbit out of your ass. If you're doing home recordings and they sound great, they sound basically pro, like you can't tell the difference as a listener, and a label doesn't own you. They're not telling you what you need to do, what type of song you need to write, what type of song you need to release. Because that was a thing. Like, it's like you write one hit song and the rest of your album doesn't really sound like that, but that one hit did really well. The label who signed you and basically owns your ass will tell you, all right, we need at least 4 more of this song for the next album. And as a writer, like you don't have much of a choice. Like you could go, nope, I'm not doing it, and break contract, and then you owe them a bunch of money time that they paid for, or you cater to it and you're like, you basically start selling your soul. And truth be told, if that opportunity came up to me, I have no qualms with writing songs to please a label if that was the case, as long as there's enough material also on the album that I am not restricted with. So it's like, can I write a 12-minute song if you're making me write 3 or 4 4-minute kind of pop rock catchy songs. We have a song called Count the Days that was on WAF before WAF shut down. And that's the station I grew up listening to. So yes, it was surreal and awesome to hear it on the radio. But if like some bigwig came up and they were like, dude, I kind of need you to write this song, the same thing, this type of song over and over again, I'd be like, well, okay, but it's gonna be worth it. Like you need to be like, you need to hold some sort of artistic integrity to do that. Now, like at this point, none of that matters. Like if you choose to write another song like that, that should be your choice completely, because who's going to stop you? It's not like somebody's going like, you're not going to be successful if you're doing this. It's like, we're already not that successful. We're barely scraping by as it is. So, writing new material, I'm not like, oh, well, people aren't going to like this. Maybe I shouldn't do it. It's like, well, no, I had fun working on it. I like doing it. I'm going to release it. And some people will like it. Some people will hate it. Some people will yell at me for stuff. We get like, I feel like musicians, aside from maybe actors, musicians deal with so much rejection on a regular basis that none of us have much self-esteem anymore. You're just so used to hearing bad stuff about you and like like songwriting and performance. Like you only hear bad stuff, and then you have support from your friends and fans and stuff like that. But I think that musicians they these days have developed like some really thick skin, because they still do what they do, and it's genuinely because they love it. They don't know how to do anything else. It's like, nope, this is who I am. I'm a musician. I'm a songwriter. That's all I know how to do. If it changes one or two people's lives, even just one person loves your music, it makes it worth it. Like you're like, okay, I'll spend another 2 years writing a full-length album for that one person who like made me feel like it was worth it. And then, counterbalance to all the people who write you hate mail and treat you like crap, or venue owners that care about numbers more than quality. So if you're playing in a different state, you're on tour or whatever, and they're like, well, how many people are you going to bring to my venue? And like that used to be a thing, and nowadays it's like it's a little less like that, because if they did that these days, nobody would book any shows, because it's like only the music community goes out to see the music community. You're not getting a lot of like regular Joes that get out of work and they're like, you know what? Oh, there's this one band that I like. I'm going to go to a show. It's like, that used to happen. Nowadays, it's like the people who go to shows all the time. So like you've seen them all. You've basically met them all. And that's why we do have a community, and that's why we're able to still do this. The pandemic's been hard for a lot of music venues, like exclusive music venues, not like restaurants and bars that also have music, but like venues that are meant for live performance. I know one that just got shut down up in Maine, in Westbrook, called Live at 212, and it was if you Google anything to do with like Maine local band, anything like that, you see Michael Cox as the photographer, because he's an amazing photographer and he lives up there, and you'd recognize his work immediately. He's like very distinctive photography, and all the same, not the same bands, but like all that same community, they play there like all the time, and it's like all a rotation of those bands. So like at this point, like we've probably met all their fans and they've met all of our fans, and it's awesome, because you get this communal like environment where people are supporting each other, instead of being like, oh, like this band sucks, we're way better than this band. Like there's none of that crap. Like that used to happen when I was in my like early 20s. Like a lot of bands would like just, they're shit talkers, and you're like, dude, like how does this benefit you to do this? Like, let's build each other up, and it'll come up as a scene, and it'll be more of a community thing where people are more inclined to want to be a part of it. They're like, oh, a bunch of people are going to this? Cool, let's go check it out. And it helps when national acts come around. Like we had the opportunity to play with Tantric and Saving Abel a couple of years ago. And it was a lot of fun. And, Jewel, the venue in Manchester, the owner of that place, like that guy's awesome. Like he cares about the quality of the music he's hiring. And he does this thing with tickets. There's this whole thing in the music scene called pay to play, which is basically somebody rents a venue or owns a venue, and they print all these tickets to have this national act come through and perform. And if you want to be a local band that opens for this national act, the rule is you have to sell at least, let's say 75 tickets at $25 a piece. If you don't sell those tickets, you don't get to play. So if you don't have enough audience to actually purchase these tickets, you end up paying out of pocket. And that's where this term pay to play came in. And it's been happening I used to bust my ass doing this. Like I would be like standing on the sidewalk before the show, trying to get rid of my last couple of tickets. And I've played with a lot of really, really big bands, and I'm very grateful for the experience. If I had known what I know now back then, when I'm in my early 20s, I would have been like, nope, it's not worth it. Like they're not signing you. They're not going to take you on tour with them. You know, it's even if you're good, which maybe we weren't good enough back then, but I mean, I haven't witnessed that happen with other bands either. These days, I stay away from it completely. If we even hear the term pay to play or ticket sales, we're like, nah, past that. Like I've already lost enough money trying to do that. And you're not really benefiting anybody except the person running the show. And that's personally how I feel. Not everybody agrees with me at this point, but Jewel does things completely different. And the owner John might not like me saying this, but he has this way that he prints all the tickets and he'll give the band like 20 tickets or 40 tickets. And he's like, sell the tickets, throw them in the trash. I don't care what you do with the tickets. Whatever you do with them, you keep the money. And he just wants quality bands to play. And you know what? I've never played a show there where it was empty. There's always a decent enough crowd or a huge crowd that's always grateful to be there. And they're either there for the main act or they're there for us because we get to play with the main act. But it feels good to be able to take care of your really close fans and friends that like maybe they can't afford to pay $20 to get into a local show. But I'm like, hey, you want a free ticket? Like it's just me not making the money. I'm not losing money. So like, I'm not paying for it. So like, it's like, here you go. It's a free ticket. Come to the show. We just want you here. We want you to experience what we have to offer and what Tantric has to offer at Saving Abel and all these bands that we get to play with. That's how he runs his shows. So we were like, as soon as I got wind of this, I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, this is genius. Why aren't other venues doing this? And he's like, it's simply a risk. Like you're trusting bands to pull this off. And if they don't, you can potentially lose money. Now he doesn't run a bar. He has a bar in the venue, but it's not a restaurant or like a regular bar that people regularly hang out at. He's not, I don't even know if he's open during the week. He's like, you know, putting on a show. This is where the show takes place. It's a huge green room. The place is really clean. It looks awesome. The bathroom's all like black and like, it looks like I designed it. It's like, you know, all gothy looking. It's cool. But you know, like music to my ears. Yeah. If a band has played there before, that's probably their favorite venue to play because they're like, you know what, you get treated like royalty. Like they really take care of musicians there and they actually give a crap. Like they want you to sound good. They want you to be happy, leave happy, talk good about the place. And they want you to be able to potentially make money and not lose even just gas money driving to a free show. And then also, you know, most musicians drink. So if you're buying drinks at a bar, you're also contributing to the bar, but you're also losing money as a musician. So we only sell so many T-shirts and so many CDs, and personally, Exhale we keep our costs as low as humanly possible. Like we do next level brand T-shirts and we sell them for $10. Individually, we probably pay like $6 or $7. So it's like if you pay, you know, if we're buying 100 or 200 T-shirts, and it's a big investment on our end, and we're only making $3 per shirt. It's like you got to sell a damn lot of shirts to you know, pay rent or feed us after the show or pay a bar tab.
The starving, thirsty musician and everything. No, but it's good when venues actually, like, I don't know, when you're not like just an afterthought. It's like, all right, we're doing all of this. Go play in the corner somewhere. It's like you are the show. Yeah.
Other venues that, you know, have been really, really good about taking care of the scene and making the actual music scene a music scene and not a way to just make money for people who put on shows, like promoters that are just out to use musicians to make money for themselves, or to think they're popular, which is even more irritating because they're like, oh, I'm awesome, I put on these shows. And it's like, dude, you're taking food out of musicians' mouths, like literally, to put on a show for a national act that probably doesn't need the money really, but you know, they're not going to play for free like a local band is. But there are venues that they'll set a low cover charge at the door and then everything gets split up evenly. You know, they pay the sound guy, which in my experience is usually between, if we're getting into numbers, in my experience, it's usually in between $100 to $200. So say that goes to the sound guy, right? And then they sometimes have to pay a door guy, right? So let's say that's $50 to $75 for, you know, a few hours of standing there and catching a free rock show. Maybe
sounds about accurate.
Yeah. I know you were a bouncer for a while. Now, if that's your cost, like that's what you need your quota you need to make in order to break even as a bar. Everything else that comes into the venue, it just gets split up among the bands, which I think is fair. It's like, well, okay, if you want to make money, bring 300 people into this room, and they all paid $5 or $7 to get in. The cost gets covered. And then whatever money's left over, you're splitting it with all, like, basically your friends, because all these bands that you're playing with, you pretty much know them all. It's rare where we play a show where there's a good band we haven't met yet, unless they're new. Or like, you know, what we call local super groups, which is basically like big names from individual bands, and that like one of their bands breaks up and then they kind of all join together. And you're like, oh, like this is this guy from this band and this guy from this band. We know them all, but they're in a new project together. And like I said, it's a community. So naturally they already know each other. They know how talented everybody is. So they all kind of work together. A lot of people do side projects now. Drummers, especially, like most quality drummers I know, are in at least 2 or 3 bands. And sometimes those bands gig together, and you see the same drummer, like, you know, two bands in a row. It's like the drummer doesn't move; he just sits on his kit.
Some drummers, I don't know. With all due respect to my folks in the drumming community, are kind of nutty bananas. At least some of them that I've run into over the course of time, just like you're just beating the crap out of those percussion instruments. Yeah. Just like nonstop, like drenched with sweat behind shields and stuff like that. But it was very interesting how you described.
It's like this one right here.
Exactly. It helps the sound. But what you just described about bands and kind of like coalescing together, I'm like, oh, so it's kind of like when a supernova goes off and all that extra material gets sapped up by other stars and stuff, and it's within the same galactic community, so it's recycling.
It's like recycling. It sort of is. And like, you know, the guys who are in their 30s or even 40s, they if you backtrack to how many bands they've been in, like you've probably met all of their old bandmates or people that the only difference would be people that were in the scene and they kind of gave up on the idea of being a successful musician, and now they live the white picket fence life, which is fine. Like, to each their own. Like if you can live without being in a band, all the power to you. I don't know what I would do with myself personally. So you see these bands that basically kind of, like you said, like the recycle, they rotate through each other, and it's like, oh, like you were the drummer to this guy's band 15 years ago, and now you're back in a band with him because this guy started a new project, and he's like, well, we need a drummer. And he's like, oh, well, I know this guy. I was in a band with him 15 years ago. He's not in a band right now, or he's only in like a side project right now. Let's give him a call. And like, who else do you call? Like, you could post stuff on Craigslist, go old school with it, but like, it's better to just go with who you know is talented and like doesn't have addiction problems or like bad attitudes or like serious ego.
They're going to show up to learn the material, and they're going to show up for the shows.
Yeah, exactly. Which is tough, especially as a drummer. There's a lot of equipment you got to carry around and set up, and it's not the most glorious instrument, but there is an old saying that a band is only as good as their drummer, which I find is super true. Like if a drummer is even a little bit loose or doesn't have a good pocket, and they're like their timing's a little lackluster, the rest of the band doesn't sound good. And it's like, it's not that they're not good. It's just like, it's a tightness thing. Like if the drummer knows exactly what's up and they're just great at what they do, the rest of the band can be like not lackluster, but they don't have to be, you know, Berkeley grads to sound like a phenomenal band live. But a drummer can make or break you, basically. And a lot of people think
if the drummer's off, you can usually kind of, it's like,
oh yeah. And you know, I'm spoiled because like my drummer's awesome. And like the other drummers, they almost get mad at him sometimes. They're like, dude, like how do you drum and then have a drastic tempo change without counting it in? Like it's irritating for other drummers because they're so used to one metronome, one beat going through the whole song. And the way I write, my drummer sometimes yells at me when we're first starting to work on a new song. I'll be like, oh yeah, and the tempo kind of bumps up like, you know, 15 BPM in this one spot. And he's like, well, there's no break or anything. You just have to like drop into it. I'm like, sorry, like that's how the song goes. And he has to like basically be keeping the backbone for what we're doing and then drastically change the tempo and be like locked in. And I can't imagine it's easy. I have trouble tracking it with the guitar, and that's after he's already done his parts. So if I wrote the song and I'm still having trouble tracking my rhythm guitar part, I can't imagine it's easy for a drummer to just have their brain like snap into a new tempo. But he always pulls it off. And I think that's also why we probably get compared to Opeth, because like they're one of the few bands that does that like regularly. That's like a normal thing for them. And honestly, it was like I never practiced with a metronome when I was a kid, like I should have. So when I would write songs, I wasn't thinking like, oh, this has to stick to one drum beat for the whole song. That's just what didn't occur to me.
Would you classify drummers as the tanks of a band? Basically, they're kind of keeping things going. Like, there's a certain amount of attention. They need to gain the aggro of the crowd and stuff like that, and then everyone does their thing. Or am I completely mischaracterizing our drummer friends?
I think that's accurate.
Could be the hitting of things.
This is a funny story. It's not actually that funny. It's more funny, peculiar. But my drummer, John Burns, who you know very well, I was at a cover band with him for almost like 10 years or something. He went to Musicians Institute out in California for drums. As soon as he moved back over to Boston, like this area, we found him on Craigslist, which we always joke that he's like a serial killer and he's playing the long game. Like eventually he's going to kill me. But we found him on Craigslist.
Drummer.
Yeah, exactly. He shows up and he has sheet music for drums, which I mean isn't unheard of, but like if you're a rock musician, it's really not normal. Like you don't see it a lot unless you're like a studio drummer where you go in and you do session work for recording. He comes in, there were songs because initially he had joined us as a cover band because we were saving up money as a cover band to buy all of our recording equipment to then record all of our Exhale material, which mission successful after 4 years of gigging as a cover band. And it was a lot of fun. You were there for a lot of it. And so he comes in and there were songs that he had never heard before that he has he has charts, like sheet music in front of him. And he's like looking at the thing. He's like, okay. And then he's literally flipping pages while he's playing. And I'm like, what? I'm like, this kid's crazy. Like, I've never seen anything like this in this like environment. If you're a jazz drummer, absolutely. That's like mandatory. You need to be able to sight read. But to have a rock drummer do this, I was like, what the hell?
He's going by the book.
Yeah, he's basically going by the book. And obviously once he learns the songs, he throws the sheet music down and has no problem with it. But he's just this conglomerate. I don't think he knows how good he is either. It's kind of irritating, but he also plays guitar and like writes and stuff. Like one of the tracks on our first album, he wrote all the music for. Like I didn't even touch it. I wrote all the vocals and lyrics, but he just tracked all the drums and he gave our bass player the sheet music for like the bass line. And actually, Finney, our guitar player, he did write the guitar solo for it because my drummer can't solo on guitar. He's about as good as I am at soloing on guitar, which is not good. Anyways, so he's kind of this like he's a musician who plays the drums. He's not like just a drummer. He does not just a beat keeper. Like he looks at it like a whole product. So fast forward to maybe 8, 9, 10 years later, he gets married and we're doing this like gigging all the time thing and really just grinding, like getting our name out there. And we released our album. It was like very exciting. We got some really, really good exposure. We do well in Australia for some reason. We have like a big Australia following. So thank you for all the Australians watching or that listen to us on Spotify daily. That helps. Thank you. So he got to a point where he was like so just tired and like lethargic and like poor because it's hard to make money doing what we're doing. And he was like, I still want to make music, but he's like this whole like grinding and like gigging all the time. He's like, I just can't do it anymore. He's like, it's worn on me after 10 years of like barely making any money. And we're still kind of playing the same venues and with the same bands. And it just feels like endless, like this uphill battle, which welcome to being a musician. But so what we ended up doing, because we recorded everything ourselves, we ended up exporting just the drum tracks with like our violins and the stuff that we usually live sample anyway. Cause I'm a sucker for strings. So like I put strings in as much stuff as I can force it into. And when we're live, it's like he's playing to a metronome. He hears the beep, the click in his ear, and the front of the house gets like the sound guy gets the channel that has like violins and piano, and it's all mapped out to like, the beat. So John keeps us in time and we follow him and we cross our fingers and everything stays tight, which has worked perfectly for years. Now, when he decided he didn't want to gig with us anymore, we were like, okay, well, we still need you to like record and write and be a member. And anytime we had like a really big gig, like Tantric, or we played with Candlebox, Mike Leslie from Candlebox, we did that stuff. He would join us in like, because we didn't want to gig without a drummer for those shows. But all the small gigs that are just about grinding and networking and keeping our name relevant, we sample the drum kit, which is really strange. I haven't seen another band do it before. Some bands hate us for it, and some bands are really impressed by it because sound guys love it because they don't have to mic up a drum kit. Right. I'm like, here's a left and right, and they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, that's all you need. And
here's our drummer. Plug him in, sync him up, and we'll be good there. Well, that also, just like you said, it's like it's not like just bringing in a guitar and like an amp. It's like drums require logistics right there, and you can get away with smaller percussion, but like that's the interesting thing, especially with the levels of technology we have now. It's like, if you want to have a full show with a full band, okay, but if you don't have somebody, it's like, well, why not do it digitally? We're doing this interview digitally. It's like, why the heck not? If we have the technology, let's use it.
Exactly. You gotta go with well, you mentioned earlier, you're working with what you have with gear, right? So that's how we've always been, like work with what we have. Only these days we all have in-ear monitors. Like I have them in right now, so I can hear you crystal clear without shouting and all that.
To the rest of our audience, we usually call those AirPods or earbuds.
Yeah, but in-ear monitors means it goes into a live mixer, so we can actually do the full band mix digitally that the audience doesn't hear. So like if I want to hear more of my bass player in my ears, just my ears, I can go into the live mixer and turn up my bass player's voice or his bass and get a perfect mix for me. He can do the same thing on his end. So like if I'm too loud in his ears, he can turn me down. And it doesn't affect anything but what's in his ears. So it's in-ear monitoring.
In that case, I stand corrected.
Yeah, it's not
I apologize. The only thing I'm good at playing is... That's all I got.
That's pretty good. I like that. Good timing, too. Get that comedic timing done, Fox.
But, well, hey, we do what we got to do. But we've been going a little over an hour, Corey. I know you got a lot of stuff to do. I still got to go running and do all that jazz as well. But my final question, if there have actually really been many questions, is just the sheer fact, where do you see the music industry going in like the next 10 years? 10 years, 20 years? Like, where do you think the future is? It's going to be here on the internet? Are we going to start seeing wide-scale shows? Are we going to see communities coming together and all be playing Kumbaya? Or is it just going to be the same rat race?
Dude, honestly, if I had any clue, I would tell you. I hope that, there's another push for rock music, any kind of rock music where people are playing actual instruments and writing original material. I know at this point, it drives me crazy, but a lot, especially because I do the solo acoustic stuff that I do is all cover songs. Not my favorite thing ever to do, but it pays the bills. It pays well. And it's one of the few things on earth that I know how to do. So I'm like, how can I, make ends meet as a musician if, Exhale isn't paying my bills? So I started doing the solo thing, 6 or 7 years ago, and it goes pretty well. And as far as jobs go, it's not too bad. Like it's I'm not playing originals. I don't get to be super creative about it, but I am playing music for people, which I do enjoy. Cover songs is this thing now where more people are getting famous from playing other people's songs than people who actually create things from nothing, and that breaks my heart. Like it kills me every time. And I'm like, yeah, there are some great cover songs.
You're so good at it, though. You're so good at it.
I don't mean me at all. I mean like.
No, I don't.
Like not even okay. So yes, local people who are YouTube famous primarily do it by singing cover songs. It's basically karaoke a lot of the time. You can even get famous from singing freaking karaoke online, which is insane. They have that smule, whatever thing, which is like
into that, but
which is freaking loaded with auto-tune, by the way. Like you hear it, like as a musician and someone who works in a post-production environment in a studio. You hear it, it's like, no, dude, you're not even remotely in key. The more of that Kanye crap you hear, the less in key they are. You have to actually sing out of key to make that noise. If you're in key, you don't hear that at all.
Are they not assuming that a lot of folks using Smule maybe are not professional musicians.
No, I know, but that's the point. Is they'll get picked up by The Voice, and they go on The Voice as a musician, and it's like, no, a musician has to grind. You have to play through really crappy amps for 10 years before you get a real one, and then you have to play all these crappy dive bars to 2 people until you get a real guitar in your hands, and then you get to play these like slightly bigger venues that you're busting ass, and you get to open for these bands that are really successful, and then maybe you get to go on tour, and then maybe you take a step further, and now you're like a popular band, very successful. You don't get to like sing in your bedroom cover songs, and then go get overnight famous on a TV show that sings cover songs, and like you're going from singing in your room to karaoke machines or whatever to having $2,000 in-ear monitors with a very, very talented band, with a super talented band on The Voice. And you're just singing along to pitch perfect music. Like it doesn't happen like that. So then also Blake Shelton, I think he's probably a good dude. I don't know. He throws around the term artist all the time. He's like, you're such a good artist. And he's like, no, I'm like, no. Artist implies creativity. If you're just singing someone else's songs and you're good at it, you're not enough. That's not art. Like, come on, what are you doing? So
it's a singer. Well, to be fair, I realize this is passionate because you are also an artist as well. But I also see the potential that I've listened to folks with over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, like a Jonathan Young, Caleb Hiles. They're talented singers. They do a lot of different anime and other covers. They put together kind of a slightly entertaining video, and I'm like, well, how's that different than like, I don't know, Disturbed doing Song of Silence or something like that? It's like, yes, they are also established. I'm just saying that if you could get some high-level notoriety, you've been grinding it out long enough, brother. I'm like, I'll happily put together a happy video for you.
Yeah, there's just no. I feel like there's not much integrity in that. If I wasn't a songwriter, I wouldn't give a crap. I would go out and I would be, doing all this cover song. YouTube stuff, this like pre-recorded fake sing-along to make it look like you're doing it live, which is exactly what people do, most anyway. But like, okay, Sound of Silence, right? Amazing cover, phenomenal cover, actually probably one of the best covers ever done in my opinion. Disturbed, however, has written dozens and dozens of hit songs long before Sound of Silence put them even further, into the popularity. Bands like what's a band I'm comfortable trash talking? Five Finger Death Punch. I'm sorry, but yeah, they cover Bad Company, and that's what puts them on the map. Their original music did not put them on the map. They took a song from the band Bad Company. It was a phenomenal band, and they did a good cover. It's very well produced. It's what we'd call hyper polished, which means like, someone put millions of dollars in studio time to make that song sound the way it sounds, which is okay. What's his name? Ivan Moody, the singer from Five Finger Death Punch. He was in a band called Motogrator 10 years, 15, maybe 20 years before Five Finger Death Punch. And they were all originals. They would come out in full body paint, and like they made their own. The reason why they're called Motogrator is they made an instrument called the Motogrator. They're super creative dudes. And then I think maybe he did exactly what you're saying that I should do, which is he's already worked for it. He's already gone through all of the process. He now knows how the industry works. He had the financial backing to be like, oh, we can polish this and make this sound amazing. Let's do a cover. And then this cover makes them like super top of the charts famous. And then like their originals come out after it. And I'm like, their originals don't hit me. Like I'm kind of like, I don't dig it. And then like Bad Wolves did basically the exact same thing right underneath them, which I think Bad Wolves sounds almost identical to Five Finger Death Punch. But I'm not familiar with their whole catalog. Maybe they get crazy with it. But they did the Cranberries cover, which, justifiably, I think most of it went to charity and all that stuff, like the profits and all that. But it still put them on the map before any original music put them on the map. So like it just breaks my heart when like I hear all these local bands that bust their ass to create from scratch and create this new sound, this thing that hasn't been done yet, and no one bats an eye. And then these bands,
and then they do something that's been around for a while, and look, oh hey, you're famous, dude. It's funny you say that because I'm going to bring it full circle right now.
Yeah,
as somebody that loves making videos and I've basically spoken into a mirror, probably just because I'm a psychopath for many years. YouTube was a wonderful thing, and then I got a corporate 100 job. And then I did that. And then I realized, oh, I was an early adopter with a channel. I'm like, why are all these people subscribing to me? I was just doing a little fitness vlog. I forgot the password for 10 years, and I emerged in my current form over here as a half-Jewish dragonkin on this internet stuff and things. But I also realized that I like to put out videos that communicate points that often can be timely, but at the same time, I hate shilling, even though I went to business school. Like, dude, I literally barely ever use tags. I don't even think I use tags for this video. But you said specifically platforms like YouTube, which the majority of the audience is right now, is heavily tag based, and I don't do that because I know it's marketing. I don't like marketing myself. It makes me feel conceited. I think we should both be a little bit more conceited.
You got to do it, man.
That's a terrible thing to say, but I'm like, you know what? I just see somebody that's incredibly talented. I see other folks that, in my opinion, and again, I don't know, I'm sure they're great people, are probably not as talented, yet are extraordinarily successful in a similar business that you are. So that's one of the reasons I kind of want to get you on here. And maybe if you're willing to be a little conceited, or maybe want to do a commission, if anybody wants Corey to get some of his either original work, or he does some damn good covers. That Little John cover, acoustic, I'm telling you, would make for a great video opening or closing. And since it's original work, bada boom, bada bing. There you go. That's the other thing. You, as long as you're at putting your own creative spin on it, it's fair use.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Spotify now allows basically anybody to upload cover songs. I think there's a $12 fee per year to license it, so you can actually make the money off of it. And then
that's reasonable. The last time I looked, I think I looked for like an AC/DC song like 6 or 7 years ago, because I'm like, what would it actually cost to do this the right way? I'm like, oh, $2,500 for a 3-minute song. I'm like, screw that. No wonder people freaking do this illegally or just BS their way through it. I'm like, as long as it's affordable, people are willing to do it.
Yeah, that's true. I want people to at least do both, try to create something.
Right.
If you're going to be, using stuff that someone else already made that was successful.
Art, and then you can do what pays the bills and stuff. But again, like that, I believe you hit the nail on the head when you said there's a difference between being a singer and an artist. And you corrected me right off the bat when I was like, oh, look, a Rockstar. It's like, in the community, we're not really big fans of that. But final thoughts for the folks out there on this internet stuff and things.
I would say if you want to support local music at all right now, or any music, you can't go to shows. It's as simple as that right now. You can't. I mean, there's a couple places in Florida that I know are doing full shows, which is risky. And I, teach their own. If they make the decision to go do those shows, go do those shows. I know Tantric's on tour right now. I know they're good dudes. I hope they're being safe. I hope their fans are being safe. But what you can do, there's this website called Bandcamp.com. And the first Friday of every month, Bandcamp waives all of their fees. So if you buy a T-shirt or you buy a digital album or an actual, CD, 100% of the profits go to the band directly. So Bandcamp takes no cuts. So it's not like if you go to iTunes, and you buy a 99-cent song, iTunes takes like 62 cents out of that. I get like 38 or something. Like you're getting like really fractions of what you should be getting. And they're just because they have the distribution. Like it's like that's where people go to download music. I don't have a place where people go to download music, So
you have your websites in the doobly-doo below, I believe.
That's true, yeah. And what we like our full length album, if you want a hard copy CD, is $10. Like it's not expensive. It's 13 songs for $10.
You don't have access to like the broad market, kind of like YouTube is the market for online videos.
Right. So exactly. I mean, we got plenty of stuff on YouTube that you can go watch for free, or watch us grab our stuff on Spotify. But if you go to xlmusic.com, like all of our links are up there, like one click. It's like go to the page and you'll see like Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Music, YouTube. You'll see all that stuff. But first Friday of every month, if you want to support local bands, or if there's a local band you want to check out, their music is you can listen to it for free on Bandcamp anytime you want. But if you want to download anything or buy a shirt, like I said, or any kind of merch, all the proceeds go directly to the band on the first Friday of every month. Bandcamp is really cool for doing that. Additionally, Bandcamp takes less money than everywhere else anyway, like even not on those days. But it's been a thing they've been doing since the pandemic. And as a musician, we really appreciate it because not a lot of businesses look out for the little guy these days, especially in the music industry.
Yeah, no, it seems that way in a lot of different industries, and I think a lot of folks are starting to take notice, and hopefully we'll be able to move on better from there. So, Corey, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you all for out on the internet watching now, in the future, perhaps in the past, if we break certain laws of physics. Hopefully they don't get broken too carelessly as well. But thank you all for watching. Peace out, everybody. Be safe. And long live the elbow bump.
낮에는 따사로운 인간적인 여자 커피 한 잔에 여유를 아는 품격 있는 여자 오빤 강남스타일